Gang leaders, corrupt police officers and companies selling small boat equipment for channel crossings, they're all facing having their assets frozen, being banned from the UK in a new crackdown by the Foreign Office.
Well, the first wave of sanctions on smuggling gangs will be imposed on Wednesday, tomorrow. And Foreign Secretary David Lammy joins us now. Good to see you this morning. So we know about the campaign to smash the gangs. Why is the Foreign Office doing this, and who will it be targeting specifically, and what kind of number of individuals do you think will be named and dealt with this?
Well, you're right that this is usually the Home Office that deals with issues to do with immigration. But actually, the Foreign Office does have a lot to do with immigration. It's the Foreign Office that often does work in countries to help people stay in those countries and not migrate in the first place. It's the Foreign Office that organise returning people to the countries that they're from if they have no right to be here. And the Foreign Office has a big sanctions regime, which many of your viewers will have heard about over many, many years. We've used it very, very well to bear down on Putin and the Russian shadow fleet in the last few years, and to encourage Europe to follow us and do more in tandem with us. When I went to the National Crime Agency and they showed me the rubber dinghies, they explained to me where the engines came from. They showed me the network of smugglers and criminals, mafia engaged in the smuggling of people, sometimes also in the smuggling of guns and drugs. I decided that we needed to look at how we use our sanctions regime to bear down on those individuals, to issue travel bans, to freeze their accounts if they have them in this country, and to encourage European partners and G7 partners to do the same. And I'm very pleased that we've got to the place where we are laying legislation today. We will have our first designations tomorrow, and you will see across those designations different jurisdictions, those who enable this crime, those who advertise their wares on the internet. We are going after them.
And you have the power to do that. Why has this not been done before?
Good question. I don't know why it hasn't been done before. But, you know, sanctions have been used effectively for decades and decades and decades. Okay. This is an important area. Of course, it's a growing area of crime. Some estimate £10 billion worth of crime lies behind this. Let's go after the men in suits that sit behind the network of people that smuggle people illegally across borders. OK,
well, we wait and see the individuals that you tackle there. Meanwhile, what is your message, particularly in the government's message, to those that were protesting on Sunday evening? Is there a line that gets crossed? I know you said you're in support of peaceful process, but do you think it's acceptable to be holding up signs saying, deport foreign criminals, we go home when they go back? Where is the line for you? Because you can see within that community and others that having hotels with asylum seekers and migrants in them is causing disruption in the community. So whose side are you on?
I don't want to pick sides. I do want to be on the side of peaceful protests. People always have a right to make their voices heard.
There were scuffles here, so this wasn't peaceful. So in a way, you do sort of have to pick a side.
I don't believe they have a right to abuse the police or make people feel safe in whatever community that they're in. We've got robust laws in place. These are operational decisions that police have to make on the ground. But absolutely, people have a right to protest, and they have a right to protest government about issues of concern. And of course, immigration and irregular migration remains an issue of national concern.
I mean, 6 were arrested, weren't they? So this wasn't the peaceful process you're talking about. So were they wrong?
No. I mean, the police make judgments on the ground. If people breach the rules egregiously, if they attack police officers, if they inflame or encourage violence or hate, then of course the police will make judgments to arrest them, and that must be judgments that they make on the ground. I wasn't there. I would have thought overwhelmingly the vast majority of people protest peacefully. You said there were 6 arrests. There are many more than that number on the streets. But that must be judgments for police to make on the ground. And I would support those that want to come out and protest, because that's the democracy that we live in, and I would defend democracy, of course.
David Lammy, can I ask you about the statement you issued yesterday with 27 other countries condemning what is now happening in Gaza? You said the suffering of civilians in Gaza has reached new depths. We were just hearing from Lord Michael Gove earlier, who said that you're getting this wrong. It's not the Israeli government's fault. It's the fact that Hamas is still trying to control the aid delivery process, that they are still at fault, and that your statement is misguided.
I warned the Israeli government that if they reduced from 400 aid sites to 4, that what would ensue would be chaos. And now we see the grotesque spectacle of kids holding out their hand for food and being shot and killed as they wait. And of course, it offends all possible public consciousness in our own country. But why we saw so many countries come together and sign that statement, I think now up to 28, is because it offends the global community, and because Israel is now putting itself beyond the global community in the humanitarian system that it is set up. It's important also to recognise that people are now crowded into just 15% of Gaza. This is the most densely populated area on the planet, more dense than any prison on the planet. And for that reason, the ability to actually get aid and assistance to people, never mind the medical aid that people need, I'm afraid is beyond possible. And for that
David
reason,
Lammy,
this war must come to an end.
I hear your words, very different from Michael Gove. Lots of people will say, though, this statement is toothless. It's all very well urging and condemning, but what are you actually going to do? How long can the British government and other governments stand back and see Israel doing things which you're condemning and not taking more drastic action? You have taken action against individual cabinet ministers in Israel, but don't you need to go further now in action to force Israel to change course?
Well, Ed, you're right. I have sanctioned ministers in the Israeli government. I have broken off any discussions of a new free trade agreement with the Israeli government. And we said yesterday that we would take further action if needed. But at the moment, what we want to see is a ceasefire.
It sounds like it's needed.
We're working with the US, Qatar and Egypt to try and bring about that ceasefire. And let me be clear, of course, much of the responsibility rests with Hamas. I don't deny that. But Israel controls who goes in and who goes out of Gaza. It controls the humanitarian system. And so it has to accept responsibility for the loss of life, for the lack of human dignity and the suffering that we now see right across the Gaza Strip.
So what is the next further step? If you don't get the ceasefire, what is the next further step you can take which would actually make a difference to what Israel is doing? What are you considering?
Well, we've announced a raft of sanctions over the last few months. There will be more, clearly, and we keep all of those options under consideration if we do not see a change in behaviour and the suffering that we're seeing come to an end. And it's important that we continue to work with international partners if we are to have the maximum result. But what I want to see is a ceasefire, and it's my assessment that once the Knesset rises on the 28th of July, we are likely, or more likely, to see a ceasefire come into effect.
Foreign Secretary, you'll be aware the Lionesses are playing tonight. Coverage starting on ITV1 at 7 o'clock. I'm sure you'll be there to watch. And you'll also be aware that they have decided, as a team, not to take the knee because of the abuse suffered by Jess Carter on social media. Do you feel that taking the knee is a symbol that's lost all meaning now? Have you ever done it? Can you understand why they're not?
I think that the substance of this is sadly that racism is still with us as a society. The vast majority of people who go to a football game, and I go regularly to watch Spurs, play in Tottenham do not engage in racism, are offended by it, and don't want their kids, actually, to hear some of it. And I was very sad that these young women had experienced the racism that they had. How people show their expression of solidarity is a matter for them. Taking the knee was very commonplace a few years ago during the Black Lives Matter campaign. I think it's waned as a way of showing that solidarity, but I leave that, it's a matter for them.
Good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.